Hello and welcome back to Will a Wonderful World. Right now we've only got one message that we can do, or one letter that we can do anyway, which is Carlos's. We've also got this still, which I think at this point we can solve, but we're gonna wait for now until we've got this. Concrete death. Days spent in prison could be boring. At noon, while the sun was right in the middle of the sky, Chin and Kyung got into an argument with each other in the yard yet again. In a couple of minutes they would start a brawl, and everyone else in the yard, inmates and guards alike, would become spectators. It had turned into a daily routine. I sat under a tree far away from the ruckus. I wore my hat low and put my hands in my pockets, hoping to hide my nervousness from the guards and other curious inmates. I had been in prison for almost half a month. At first I thought that I might have been arrested for wandering the streets in women's clothing. It was a strange reason to be arrested in Hong Kong, but I simply couldn't think of any other possibilities. Never would I have ever imagined that another possibility could exist. They finally told me that I had been arrested for murder. This was beyond ridiculous. In the 10 Commandments of the Catholic Church, the 5th commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," how could I possibly have committed murder? And the person that they accused me of killing? I had never even met him before. Ren used to tell me stories about how gangs would sometimes send some of their own young boys to confess for the crimes of the bosses. But usually they would at least get the story straight first. Why hadn't I heard anything in advance? I tried to send a message outside, hoping to get in touch with Mr. Kwan or any of the other people in the group. But I hadn't heard anything back. Just when I was starting to lose hope, an unexpected visitor came to see me. It was so brave and nice for Ye to visit. She was wearing a light green cheongsam, even more beautiful than the one I remembered. Her hair hadn't all grown back yet, but she still looked good. Ye told me that after I had saved her from the auction house, she had been worried about me. She had even sent someone from the Blood Gang back to Pitt Street 99 to ask about me. They found out that I had never been back there ever since. Coincidentally, the man Ye had sent ran into Ren. Ren had been worried about me too, and he also happened to know Ye's man, so Ren went with him to the Blood Gang and told Ye everything he knew. I was arrested by the police on the same day that I helped Ye escape. Mr. Kwan heard from the auction house about what I had done. He was outraged, but before he sent people to come after me, he got a phone call from the secretary of Mr. Lin. In the phone call, he was told that it had been arranged for me to stay in prison. From then on, whatever happened to me should not concern group loyalty anymore. Mr. Kwan and the others didn't know for sure how I had offended the bosses so much. Based on the instructions they heard, they suspected that I wouldn't have much longer to live. Ren gave Ye all of my personal belongings that I had left with the group, hoping that she could bring them to me when she visited. Ye's finger accidentally touched my phone when she was showing me my things. It lit up. A woman with curly red hair appeared on my screen. One of the Blood Gang members with us immediately recognized her. "What? Do you know my sister?" I couldn't contain my excitement and jumped up from the chair. "Stay quiet." The guard behind me stepped forward and pushed me back down. Ye unlocked her own phone and turned the screen towards me after a few clicks. I saw a list of people, some without a name but only a photo, followed by a string of digits. I read through the list one by one and stopped at the 5th person. She looked so much like my big sis, but her name was labeled Dragon. That was quite a coincidence. That was quite a coincidence. Your sister last contacted you from Hong Kong, right? Well, she has never left. She is now one of the top assassins in the field. There's an $8 million bounty on her head. Dragon is her code name. Jin and Kyung finally started fighting. Cheers erupted around them. All of the other inmates and guards were gathering around them. I snuck into the storage room at the corner of the yard while no one else was watching. I had long noticed this one locker inside the storage room. It was full of random things that had not been claimed in a long time. I opened the locker with one hand and pulled my other hand out of my pocket. I had been holding some tools in my palm, which was completely wet as I had been sweating nervously the whole time. The tools had been brought in by Ye. She had hidden them inside of the toiletries that she gave me. She told me to use these tools to break out of the prison. Ye also said that my being arranged into going to prison probably had something to do with my sister. Someone might be using me as leverage to blackmail Alicia. Or it could be a revenge on her by punishing me. Whichever the case was, I needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the Black Dragon Gang was in control of this prison, so Ye and the Blood Gang couldn't just break me out of there. Therefore, I had to do that part myself. Once I was out, the Blood Gang would assist me in any way they could. So, a prison break? Was I capable of something like that? Never mind whether or not the guards would catch me if I tried. My cellmate alone would probably ruin the whole thing before I even got started. Nevertheless, I decided to hide the tools well in advance. Even if somebody discovered them here, they wouldn't be able to trace them back to me. As for my sister, I needed more time to think about this new information. Maybe I could find out more while I was still inside. I was just about to close the locker when I heard slow footsteps and wheels rubbing against the ground outside. They were getting closer and closer to the storage room. Crap, please don't be the guards. I hastily hid inside the locker and closed it. I could still see a little of what was going on outside through the door crack. A blond man in a prison uniform pushed a cart inside and closed the door. There were a few bags of concrete in the cart. I had heard that a new prison building was under construction. Lots of inmates were assigned to work on the site. He must be one of them. He started to unload the bags. 1, 2, 3... Another inmate was under the bags. His mouth was gagged and his limbs were tied up. I finally recognized both of them. The blonde one was said to be an infamous serial killer. Everybody called him Pi, and he had been sentenced to life in prison. Oh. The other one that Pi had just dragged out of the cart and tossed on the ground was Kai. He was a serial rapist who had been sentenced to 20 years for over 14 assaults. He was lying there, barely conscious. It wasn't unusual for inmates to have a go at each other. However, Kai seemed to have been completely knocked out. Our yard time would be over in half an hour. If they stayed in here too long, it might be too hard to sneak out. If Pi found me hiding in the locker, that might be even worse. Pi put on his gloves. I swallowed nervously. He pinned Kai to the ground and choked his neck, until Kai eventually stopped moving completely, and opened the locker. He noticed me. Pi grabbed me by the collar and dragged me out of the locker, then chopped me on the neck with his bare hand. Unimaginable pain traveled from my neck to my head, and I could feel my brain being cut off from the rest of my body before I blacked out. When I woke up, I found myself stuffed inside a bulk bag. Everything below my chest had been submerged in concrete, which had not completely hardened, but the pressure on my chest was making it almost impossible to breathe. To stop me from making any sounds, he had also sealed my lips with a piece of cloth soaked with concrete. I rocked my body as hard as I could and fell to the ground. Then I saw another bag which had been filled with solid concrete right before my eyes. The weird shape of the bag convinced me that Kai must be inside it. It was late at night. Pi would probably come back early in the morning and finish the job. Then he would throw these two bags with our bodies in them into the foundation of the new building and pour some more concrete over both of our concrete coffins. No one would ever know. I had nothing to do with this. I was just here to hide something. How did I end up like this? Carlos. Well, you should have just greeted him and then walked past him out of the building. Oh, we don't have that choice. We're already in the locker at that point. How about this? Oh, Pi tied me up and tossed me aside after noticing me. And then I watched Pi perform an unbelievable operation on Kai. He made sure that Kai would never be able to assault anyone ever again. Pi must be a total psycho. He still wasn't done. Pi stuffed the mutilated Kai into a bulk bag and started pouring the concrete he had mixed into the bag. Kai was soon completely covered in concrete. Kai no longer existed in this world. Then Pi grabbed another empty bag and walked towards me. Soon, I would no longer exist in this world either. Okay, that's not... that's not good. What about this? No. Wait, can I? No. Okay. And how many? Okay, there's 5. Interesting. Okay. Pi was still focused on Kai and paid no attention to this person who had just jumped out of the locker. I heard that Pi was mentally ill, but his diagnosis had come back normal. Some people said the diagnosis must have been forged, as there were plenty of people who hated him and wanted him to be sent to prison. Nevertheless, seeing the twisted expression on his face right now, I was certain that the normal diagnosis must have been fake. In any case, as long as he hadn't noticed me, I figured that I should just sneak out. I inched towards the door slowly and steadily, then I turned around very carefully. When I was only 2 steps away from the door, I felt a breeze on the back of my neck, and then my body stopped responding to anything. When I woke up, I found myself feeling itchy and cold, and stuffed inside a bulk bag. Alright. And the rest is as we know it. Pi had come over with another bucket of concrete. He saw that I was awake, but didn't even bother to knock me out. He just poured the concrete into the bag. I wished that he would just punch me instead. The concrete had gone over my nose. I couldn't breathe anymore. I was seeing all kinds of hallucinations, and hearing all kinds of noises. Maybe I should have talked to him instead of trying to sneak out. Perhaps he would like me better then, and let me live? I felt so pathetic dying like this. I must have committed too many sins to end up like this. Sister, where are you? I miss you so much. But there is no I said it before. Best choice would have definitely been to just stand in the room and talk to whoever came in. If it was a guard, well, you know what I would have done? Sure, you're standing in front of a locker where you've got all your tools in. Close the locker. Go, 2 lockers to the left, 2 lockers to the right, doesn't matter. Open that one. If you can't open it, pretend you just closed it. And then they'll search that locker. And they'll find nothing particularly of interest in there. Probably even make up a reason why you went here in the first place. Tell them you wanted to store or something. I don't know. Whatever. And then everyone's fine. If it was a guard. But it wasn't a guard. How about this? This doesn't change anything. Does any of this change anything? Does swallowing nervously matter at all? Doesn't look like it. At this point I'm just trying out things. But none of them really change much. There you go. I made up my mind and came out of the locker. I looked at the unconscious Kai, hoping that he was still alive. Hey, don't you think that he has suffered enough? He will be 60 by the time he can get out, and he will die alone for sure. I'm certain he will regret what he did in his youth. Killing him now is actually showing him mercy, right? You don't really have to do this. I inched closer to the door as I was speaking. I needed to stay as far away from this lunatic as I could. I didn't really have any sympathy for Kai. I heard that he had even raped some 50-year-old woman. By that count, he might still hurt people even if he was released at 60. Pi seemed to be pondering my words. Yeah, but at that point you can still kill him when he's 55. Huh. Who knew that lunatics could think too? Most lunatics can think very well. When I was only 2 steps away from the door, he spoke. You make a good point, but I still think you should suffer a little more. What he did next paralyzed me. I stood there completely stunned, watching Pi take my brand new dagger out of the locker and use it to cut off Kai's private part. He then rubbed some concrete on his wound. Next, he covered Kai's severed private part with concrete and stuffed it into Kai's hands. Kai was still unconscious the whole time. This was something that a normal person would never witness their whole life. I was in such shock that I completely forgot about escaping. After he was done, Pi asked me what I had been doing in the locker while cleaning up the blood on the floor. I still couldn't move, and I dare not lie to the psycho in front of me. I told him everything. He finished his cleaning, walked up to me and put one arm around my shoulder. The cloth in his right hand, soaked with Kai's blood, even brushed against my frozen face. A prison break. Sounds like fun. Count me in. Oh god. Alright. Sure. Oh god, yeah.
Porque siempre me pasa eso.
Okay, for now, we'll complete that quickly. Okay. Wait, what was the history? Wasn't there something... Where's the message with the cat? There it is. And wait, give me a second. I'll be right back. Okay, let's continue. So, I enter the passcode, I open the door is what we want to try. And we can just put that over there, it doesn't really matter right now. There was a stack of files in the safe. I flipped through them quickly. They were exactly what I'd been looking for. Before I could find out where Lieutenant was being held, I heard somebody walking in my direction. I quietly closed the safe, hid the files under my jacket and snuck into the bathroom. In the men's bathroom, there was a stall that had a window to the outside. It wasn't too big, but it was enough for an adult like me to climb out. And the back door of the station was not far away from the outside of the window. So I left the station without being seen by anyone, just like that. According to the files, Lieutenant Kang was being held in Detention Center number 6. It was one of the special facilities that were used specifically to hold suspects of special interest. I hid the files in the tall grass not too close to the detention center. Then I walked up to the entrance empty-handed. I showed the guard my ID and told him that I'd like to see Lieutenant Kang. Kang back, yeah? The guard checked the record book in his hand. No visitation is allowed for this person. Check again, I'm a police officer. I waved my ID again to prove my identity. It doesn't matter, you need special permission to visit him. He shook his head and closed the book. I didn't leave immediately as I tried to think of another way to get in. My forehead started to sweat under the guard's suspicious stare. You wanted to see Kang back, yeah? What's your name? A guard over 2 meters tall was standing behind me. I hadn't even noticed him there. He had startled me when he suddenly spoke. I showed him my police ID. It had my name and my unit on it. The tall guard gave me back my ID and nodded at the guard. He then said, "Follow me." As soon as I saw Lieutenant Kang sit down on the other side of the glass, I immediately picked up the phone on the wall. I had to take this chance to ask him to tell me everything. Lieutenant Kang held the phone up to his mouth and mumbled something quietly. I could understand that he might be feeling low, but this was not the time. I came here to help him, but I couldn't hear him at all. What was that, Lieutenant? I can't hear you. Lieutenant Kang leaned forward and got closer to the glass. Despite knowing that his voice could only come through the phone, I couldn't help but lean forward too. And then he spoke. I was so shocked that I sprung back into my seat and I almost dropped the phone in my hand. I didn't realize that the man sitting right in front of me was Officer Chi-yeon. What? What? I forgot, was Chi-yeon was the female, right? Yeah. So probably not the right voice. Alright, sure. She was a master of disguise if I remember correctly, but still, okay.
내 탓이야. 바보같이.
I kinda wanna know how this continues first.